Good
Good
morning.
morning.
Did you already have coffee?
I have not.
Dang, bro. You're going to talk to me without having coffee?
See how it goes.
This is
Could be
sketch,
50-50.
dude. This is really
Could go
sketch.
off the rails.
I'm a little scared right now.
It could be pre-coffee, just dialed in.
Free coffee just dialed in. I had double coffees this morning. I've been up for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, I'm naturally like I'm more of a morning person, I think, than a night person.
Yeah.
So I can get up and go.
I'm a night person.
Yeah.
I love being up late. It's completely terrible right now to do that.
Yeah.
You have a kid, you're up late, they're up early,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
over.
Your sleep window.
It just doesn't make sense, dude. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I've got all these burning desires right here.
Tell me about that.
Dude, are you ready for this?
Yeah.
You ready for this? How exposed are you feeling? Let's figure this out. You ready to get interviewed? Can I interview you?
Yeah.
We often get questions about the transition from barista to business owner. You were not
Okay.
a barista,
Yep.
so you didn't make the transition from barista to business owner.
That's correct.
But the follow-up questions are applicable.
Yep.
So we can bat this one around. Follow-up questions are, was there always the desire to be an entrepreneur, or was it more of a forced title obtained through passionate desire to do coffee and service your way? This is pointed, I think, more towards me and Jared, but I'm kind of curious about you and where you came from, because we've talked about your background on the podcast before. Wall Street, working in Ethiopia, South Sudan for TechnoServe. So my curiosity is tickled. Like, what made you want to make the transition from working for somebody to doing something like this?
Yeah. Yeah, I've got a few like a few strains I could run with. Like one was so entrepreneurship, like, or owning a business, it's been part of like my family. So my like great grandparents, when they like came to the US in like the early 1900s, like they started a business, and there was always a lot of like family lore around like the business they started that I was like grew up hearing about. And there was that kind of push about like, hey, this is something, you just hear all these positive things about this person who started a business and things like that. So there was that kind of lore growing up. My parents were divorced when I was pretty young, but my stepdad had his own business, and he had a vending machine business.
No way.
So he owned vending machines. Yeah, it's obviously like Coke and Pepsi, right, or like the big people that own vending machines, but he had a little independent vending machine company where he owned vending machines in like manufacturing facilities or car sales lots. And he had like a route. I mean, he still does it today. He's got like a little route that he would travel, and like he'd buy all the Coke, buy all the soda or pop and all the stuff wholesale, and all the like, I don't know, all the stuff you see in vending machines, and then he'd go around and fill up his vending machines and stuff. And so that was his own business that he ran. So it's like I grew up in a house where he had his own business and saw him kind of doing his financials and trying to grow his, talking about trying to grow his business and compete against like Coke and Pepsi and stuff. So I did have that kind of, it was something that was talked about a lot when I was growing up.
That's pretty cool.
Would be like step one.
That's okay. That's step one.
Yeah.
Step one is you're surrounded in the culture.
Yeah.
It's almost a family tradition.
Yeah,
If you want to call it like that.
Totally.
Okay. What's step two?
Step two is when I got interested in high school, into kind of economics and markets and things like that. My uncle was like a commodities trading advisor in the Midwest, so he traded like corn and hogs and all that kind of stuff. And I'd sit with him and learn about how all these different markets worked. And I thought it was really interesting how the world is really interconnected through all these like economic channels. And so that led me to like read a lot of books about stuff in high school, and that kind of led into college. And doing like a finance degree, like heading in that direction. And then, if you want to be at like the peak of finance, it's like you move to New York, you do Wall Street stuff. It's like, we didn't have a ton of money growing up. So it's like, that was also a way to like provide, like a life for myself that, obviously you don't really have any idea of what it's really like until you get there and are doing it. But at the same time, doing the Wall Street stuff, it's like I did a lot of analysis, like a lot of financial analysis of other people's businesses. Right. A big part of the job is valuing and trying to see the future of what other businesses could be worth, like how, you're doing a lot of analysis of other people's businesses, like what big picture things are happening in the world that could lead certain businesses to be doing better than other businesses, right? And you're trying to pick and choose those businesses that are going to do better than other businesses. So I was around a lot of people, on Wall Street who had their own businesses and who had built their own businesses into these bigger companies. Mm-hmm. So I think that was stage 2 of like, I was doing the analysis and all this stuff, and I was like, man, I really want to build something. Like, I don't just want to be the person who's analyzing your business and it's like seeing all the cool things that you built. It's like, I would love to be the one building the business.
What were some of the things that attracted you to that? You're taking a peek inside the business and you're saying like, oh, I want to do this for myself. I don't just want to analyze yours. Was it mostly financially motivated, or was there some sort of freedom and autonomy? Like, what were the things that made that attractive to you?
To me, it was like creating something out of nothing.
Okay.
I think it was like the really big draw, because when I worked for like a private investment fund, so we're investing in different things, but at the end of the day, it's like we're doing an analysis and we're moving money around, right? And we're trying to profit off of that. But it's like, to me, that felt like all I'm doing is moving money around, versus the idea of like, I see all these people who have been really successful they started with nothing and then they built something that now exists because they like worked really hard to make it happen.
They brought something into the world that wasn't there before.
Yeah.
And hopefully people are benefiting from that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
On
and it's
all
like,
ends.
Yeah. They've got, team members and like livelihoods, and they're helping these people with like, they're providing these platforms to help these people live, their best life and do these things that they're really excited about. So that was kind of like stage 2 of like seeing that and being really, being like drawn into that idea.
Got it. So we've got some sort of family tradition plus this, you'd call it inspiration, I suppose, right?
100%.
Yeah, you're peeking behind the curtain and you're thinking, oh, I would love to do something like this.
Yeah, I got to talk to a lot of people that had started businesses and things, and just to hear, to 100% be like inspired by them.
And then phase 3.
So phase 3 was where like I could have done something else, because phase 3 was doing kind of the international development work, working overseas, working with nonprofits, and just doing really fulfilling work. You can, with the skill set I had, I could have a really impactful. I could have really impactful work in different places around the world that really like filled me up, and I could be a part of projects that I thought were doing good in the world. Mm-hmm. That combined with like, I liked to like push myself to and like explore new places and push myself in different ways. It's like, I could have definitely seen myself going in some kind of like, there was the international development, but also kind of like the disaster and like rescue part of things. Like I knew a few people that did that, and I generally am pretty good in like a crisis situation. So, the people that go in when there's like a huge flood or there's like a disaster, like the disaster relief people or disaster response people, like that was something that I thought about doing, that kind of filled that void of like, I'm like having an impact, I'm like helping people, I'm being of service, and also I have this kind of like adrenaline rush that's like attached to it.
What do you think you would have done there? Would you have been a volunteer? Because when you were at TechnoServe,
Yep.
you were still doing financials,
Yep.
right? Before something with a greater cause than, so it kind of feels like the way you're talking about it in Wall Street, you're just cool. I'm moving money around, valuing things. It could be widgets. I don't feel emotionally connected necessarily to the thing that I'm doing.
I mean, there is
Or-
that part, but it's like I did feel like I got to meet a lot of the people that were part of these companies. It wasn't necessarily like a faceless finance. It's like
Okay.
I got to meet and connect with a lot of people that were companies that we were investing in and stuff like that. So, and it was really interesting. I got to learn, every week or every couple weeks, every month, we were looking or doing analysis on different types of businesses and different industries. So I got to meet like a whole, I got to work on a whole range of different types of industries and businesses and things like that. So it was really interesting work during the day. It was just that it was like 14 hours a day of really interesting work.
Yeah.
To where I just was burning out. I just was going to burn out at some point.
So you did get to interact with cool people. There was a sense of connection, and then it was just the culture that wrapped around the whole thing
Yeah.
was just insane.
It's just a very different culture. I mean,
Yeah.
again, it's some of the smartest people in the world who their drive is generally super competitive, and generally you meet a lot of people that didn't have money, and like they wanted to build like a really they wanted to build a life where they had money for themselves. And so it's like this world of super competitive, really smart people that want money.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So I said insane, but maybe insane's the wrong word, because for those people, it's not insane at all. They're like, this is what you do to get the thing.
Yeah.
Right. And they're
Yeah.
hardwired for it, or they'll embrace that journey in some way. So
Yeah, I knew a number of people that like by 35 they were like millionaires and just like cashed out. And
Yeah.
I mean, I know them now, where like, because I was in my 20s, but it's like they stayed with it for like 10 or 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
Put their head down, worked 14 hours a day, and it's like cool. Yeah, now they're
minted.
now they're minted. But
Yeah.
but it's like,
maybe I'm the insane
but like,
one.
what did they give up to get? This is a whole nother podcast or line. It's
Right.
like, what did they give up to get that? Right. So
Right.
I also knew plenty of people who were divorced and like their kids didn't talk to them, and because they were just at work like 14 and 16 hours a day.
Do you think, because you came back to the States when you got sick,
Yeah.
do you think if you never got sick, you never would have come back?
Yeah, we weren't planning to come back anytime soon, because we were really enjoying the work we were doing in South Sudan. And again, that was almost like my first business of like being the head, co-head of a project where we were building, the goal was to build something there, within the structures of the nonprofit, but it was to be of service to the people who were coming back to South Sudan from refugee camps, and who were like cutting their coffee farms out of the forest, or the forest had overgrown the coffee plants that they'd had before, and to set up the mills and the washing stations and things like that, and to help create and support like an industry that was there before, that just had been like decimated by war. So it's like, I almost kind of saw that as like building something there,
Mm-hmm.
and being of service, and having an impact. So I definitely, and it still had that, still had that kind of, I'm pushing the edge of, being out there doing really interesting things, that I still had that kind of desire to keep pushing on,
Yeah, that makes sense, because that's something that I would never do, just from a comfortability standpoint. You're in a different place with different people, a culture that you didn't grow up in, doing work that is kind of uncharted.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, okay, so we've got these levels of
Yeah,
things, right? And then you get malaria for the umpteenth time, and this one's really bad. And then you come back to the States, and then when we met, so when you showed up at Verve, when you got back to the U.S., what kind of jobs were you looking for? What was the plan there?
Yeah, totally. So just to go back real quick to kind of my time in East Africa and Ethiopia, Kenya, South Sudan, it's like I met, you know, I'd say like when I worked in New York, it's like my values, it's like I didn't necessarily have like a values alignment with a lot of the people I worked with. And I didn't have a lot of like really good, I didn't like connect really well with the people that I worked with. But like working in coffee, and like I'd meet all the green buyers that came over to Ethiopia and were buying from the TechnoServe program. From Sweet Maria, Stumptown, European companies, Starbucks, Pete's, and they were all really like, I really enjoyed the people, and really connected with the people. And I'd never met anybody really in the coffee industry before. And I was just like, man, like I really enjoy the people that I've met in the coffee industry. So that was one thing when I came back that I was like, it seems like coffee is a very like entrepreneurial industry, just from my experience kind of talking to, being in Ethiopia, talking to the people that came from the US and other places, people that own their own companies or were green buyers for bigger companies. So, I mean, my first thought, which thankfully I got talked out of by, other importers, was like, cool. It's like, could I be like a green coffee importer? Right. Which I understand today. It's like an incredibly difficult it's like scale is really important. It's incredibly difficult to do this as like a small one-man person, much less someone like who's on the smaller, I'd say Red Fox, right? They're on like the smaller side, especially. But Aleko's like, his knowledge and his experience is deep in the game from when he was like a teenager, you know, like
he's got as much experience as anybody could hope to have.
Exactly.
He's a legend, so to speak, in that world.
Yeah. So right, coming in, and I was probably like 31 at this time, coming back from East Africa. So that was my first thought, was like, well, can I, since I kind of have been on the, the origin side, it's like, could I connect with roasters and things like that? The very first thing I did was like pay my own way for like to go to Roasters Guild.
Oh, sweet.
And I went to like 2012 Roasters Guild was kind of like my first coffee industry event. And I met some cool people there. I think Norbert was like just starting.
Oh yeah,
Cropster. He was in my like roasting group, and there are a couple of people from Stumptown that I really connected with. And I'd had that connection from them buying. They were big buyers of the TechnoServe program. But coming back, it was but thankfully it's like I was doing the research of going back to like what kind of business. It's like, cool, it was like green coffee importing business, but I talked to a few people that were, and they were like, you don't want to do this. It's a really hard business. It's really competitive. You need scale. The finances behind it are really difficult.
There's probably a reason, we were talking about this the other day, that you don't see a ton of these boutique companies, and the ones that are living are thriving off these deep-seated relationships, like you've said. And then even some of the bigger companies are owned by even bigger companies.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
it seems like very, very, very capital intensive.
100%. And so that was my first thought, but also, even just seeing it in Ethiopia, because there's a huge cafe culture in Ethiopia, and then coming back to the US and kind of seeing cafes for the first time, through the lens of like the coffee industry, coming back and beginning to work at Verve, and really getting, I had a really incredible mentor at Verve, and like getting to see the human connection side of coffee, and the business side of like there's like a really nice business model for how a coffee shop can work. And again, it just kind of reinforced to me like that the industry is very like, can be very entrepreneurial for people who are looking to like work hard and like build something for themselves, that this is an industry where you can potentially like make that happen.
Right. 2 questions. One, rewind for a second. What is cafe culture like in Ethiopia?
Oh man, it's so awesome. So I'll go back and say like when I was in Ethiopia, everyone that I talked to was really proud of like yeah, just the cafe culture they have there, and it's very so. Ethiopia never, yeah, we'll say they're never colonized, but there's a really big Italian presence in the country there for a long time, to the point where like you can be in like a tiny village, 100 miles from Addis, and like you can find places like you can eat spaghetti. They've got like pasta
Is this
and like red
post one of
sauce.
the wars or?
I think it was pre-World War II.
Okay.
From maybe like early 1900s up until World War II. There's a really big Italian presence there. In Addis, the capital city, like there's a whole part of town that's called Piazza, which is like an Italian name, and the word for car in Amharic is machina, which is like
Oh, weird.
the
Yeah.
word for car in Italian. So there's these little bits of even Italian language that flow into like Amharic language, and for sure these bigger parts of Italian culture that flow into Ethiopian culture, and a bit. And one of the things you see everywhere are cafes. Like there are cafes everywhere with the when I was there, 2010s, like lever machines everywhere.
Are they very espresso centric? Yeah.
Super espresso centric. I mean, everywhere I would think of it is espresso drinks. I guess I should say, barring that, there's for sure that there's just also like the really big tradition of coffee. Like after every meal, you kind of have these like 3 cups of coffee. It's kind of just a tradition that a lot of people have. So there is that kind of coffee that's kind of traditionally roasted and brewed. But in terms of like going into a cafe, I don't remember a lot of brewed coffee. I just remember like mostly the espresso drinks.
Is that the most common thing that people are drinking? Straight espresso, or are people doing some form of?
They'd be like they've got like their
cappuccino-ish
own
thing?
version of like a macchiato, cappuccino. I'd say we're like the most common things that are often on menus, like from what I saw.
That's wild.
Yeah,
That would be super fun to go to.
yeah,
Okay. So
yeah. You dig it. You dig the machines for sure.
I love these fringe. I love more so now than ever, like cafes that are rooted in some deep sense of tradition. Like when I was talking to Kent at La Marzocco, it's like I want to go to Italy and find the classic version of the Italian coffee bar that hasn't been ruined by Instagram and social media.
Yeah,
And I had a little bit of that experience when I did go to Italy for Host, because this was probably, I don't know, 2007, 2008, somewhere in there. So pre-social media world, and things just were the way they were. There was a little bit of new coffee influence in Milan, but not much. Now I'm sure it's so much more, and these more traditional things are probably just slowly dying off, which I think is sad.
but
Because
it's just the evolution of things.
Yeah, it's weird. This is a mini tangent, but I would hope that things could evolve and then still stay away from that monoculture where, show me a picture of any cafe and they all essentially look the same. It provides no sense of place, no sense of occasion. It's just, this is what's cool right now and we're in it. So anyway, but yeah. I want to go see these cafes.
Yeah, because I mean they're everywhere, all across the country. Small towns, you can still find cafes with espresso machines. It's just really cool everywhere I went in the country. Like you could find in Ethiopia, you could find cafes and people drinking coffee.
So you landed back in the U.S. You're in this coffee culture. You're seeing it through a new set of eyes because you've been at Origin on the production side of things, seeing all this stuff that was, I'm sure you never thought about that before, right?
Yeah.
So when you landed at Verve, you had a mutual friend there, an acquaintance that got you the job. So how did you have a plan to stay there and learn? Like obviously you and Mike developed a really good relationship.
Yeah.
Or was it supposed to be just a temporary job for you, or were you even thinking about it at all,
Yeah, I mean, like we were talking about, it's like I'd kind of been looking ever since kind of being forced back to the U.S. just that idea of starting a business and building something was kind of always in the back of my mind. And so just wherever I was kind of like viewing what I was doing through the lens of like, could this turn into something? Could I turn this into something where I could build something? It was kind of like the approach that I took to wherever I was working. And so I think it became pretty, it's like I went through kind of the exploration of the coffee importing. But shortly after that, it's like, seeing a lot of these other cafes and things like that, I was like, that looks like something that I could potentially do as well. And so starting to work at Verve and seeing what it was like from kind of the inside of the company. I think it was pretty quick from when I started there that I could see, I really enjoyed my time. Like when I was there, really amazing people. I really enjoyed like the people I worked with, the really open plan office and the ability to learn. I could hop into like the QC area and just cup coffees for part of the day. And I really enjoyed it. And then just as well understanding it's like often really important to, if you want to start a business in something, to have that, that 2-3 years experience, working for somebody else who does that and really gaining the knowledge of how you could do that. And just kind of always in the back of my mind that while I pretty quickly like understood, didn't think I could do it myself.
Right.
That feel like I was maybe always on the lookout for like people that I could do it with.
Yeah. Yeah. So when did you start exploring that? And I guess this is like a double stack question. Like, when did you start exploring that? And how did you end up? Because if rumor's correct, it's like you were talking to several people about jumping in on the train. Like, let's do something together.
Yeah. I think it was once you and Jared left, I think that's when my like urgency to do something on my own kicked in. Because again, not a secret in the coffee industry, it's like, it's historically just a really hard industry to have as a career, right? Like historically to like, to make enough money doing what you're doing to like, work in the coffee industry for 20 years, and build a retirement and buy a house and all the kind of things you may want financially as you get older and have kids and things like that. It's like, historically that's difficult in the coffee industry.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say it's still true today because to do those things, so you need to work for a company of a certain scale to provide a certain amount of, income. And there's not a ton of those, but even let's say there were, I can't even make it. Even if there were,
I didn't have a desire to work in a more corporate.
Yeah, you're kind
structure.
Of looking for Goldilocks, right? To where it's just this company that's maybe a little bit more culturally centered, that's not a big behemoth.
Yeah.
But then even, for people out there within those companies, let's say you find the company that's the perfect size. There's a small percentage of jobs at each one of those companies that will provide what you're talking about.
Exactly.
And those jobs don't come up very often. So you have to be in the game for a long time, either be willing to stick it out, and then you're kind of...
Or be willing to hop, right? You either have to be willing to stick it out, right, which I've talked about as generally like a pretty good path. If you're able to be patient and stick it out, it's like you will see people hop or you will see people leave over time, but otherwise you're going to have to be willing to hop to other companies when there's openings, right? And develop those relationships where people know you and want to work with you.
Yeah. And then the hopping seems tricky too, because more often when I see people hopping that do it for the long term, they ultimately end up hopping to a bigger company. Totally. You know what I mean? They end up saying like, okay, I'm going to go work for, I don't want to say company names, but people with just like humongous operations and deep pockets, because I think everyone kind of realizes they're having the same realizations over time. Yeah. Right. Which is like, this is exactly what you said. It's a really hard industry to do all the things that you listed. Buy a house, have a retirement, big future planning, like sizable
support
income.
kids,
Right.
all that kind of stuff.
Right. And those things become more important as you get older.
Yeah, as you get through your 20s
Yeah.
and your 30s, right, you start thinking, I started thinking more about that. And so that's when, having been where I was for 2-3 years, you start bumping up against maybe like salary limits, right? You start bumping up against some of these like limiting factors. And so that I think combined with, as your friends at work, move on to other places and you're kind of looking around and you're one of the people that's still there. That's to me when I was like, okay, maybe there's a little more urgency around like, I think I've learned enough to do this, and maybe like who would be the right person or people to try this with.
Right. And then what did you see your role as being? You're embarking on this new journey. You're not really sure who you're going to do it with. You're talking to several people, and you said, I don't know if I could do it on my own. In the sense, you've never been a barista,
right.
like a production barista,
Yeah,
right?
Totally.
What did you envision your role being, and do you feel like you have that now?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, right, it's like the skills that I had developed in the coffee industry were cool. It's like I had developed a pretty good palate. I understood how the coffee buying and the selling, on the origin side worked, which I think is important as well. It's like I understand the supply chain, right, of green coffee in terms of how it gets sold from origin, how the roasters buy it. I have a really strong background and understanding of like the business model of cafes and of a coffee company. And then I'd also had experience in essentially project managing and overseeing what it took to build a cafe. So I think that like you said, that's a really important part for me as I was thinking about how I could set myself up for success in starting a business. It wasn't just like jump in and I can do it all. Like I can do it all, because for me, I wanted to utilize like the skill set where I was really strong and then work with other people. Also, I'm an extrovert. I get energy from being around I get energy from other people, and so I don't want to do some kind of work where I'm doing it by myself, right? I want to work with other people, and so that also is like a natural fit for me to want to work with partners, and so that also helps. It's like cool. I know I'm really strong in the financial side of coffee, the buying side of coffee, and like the building cafes side. So it's like, are there people I know and like and connect with who are good at the things that I'm not good at? Because I think that is ultimately like how you set yourself up for success in the best way.
Yeah. And how did some of those initial conversations go? Like some of the things that didn't work out. Why do you think they didn't work out?
Yeah, totally. I probably talked to like maybe 3 people or 3 groups of people. One would have potentially, one was with somebody who'd kind of been in the industry for a really long time, had a lot of experience on the different sides, but also had some overlapping experience with me and would have required me to leave Santa Cruz, which again, I mean, that was something that we were looking at. That wasn't off the table, but at that point I was married, so it's a joint conversation. If my partner wants to move and where we'd be moving to, and thinking about starting a family and things like that around the same time. So that was one where just maybe the move and the fit maybe wasn't as ideal as that was one area, that was one path I was looking at. Another one was someone who was like awesome in the cafe, like awesome managing cafes, like great with people. Maybe not the biggest connection between me and them. So there would be some like kind of compromise again, and I think that also would have required moving somewhere else. So again, just because as like multiple people in a place like Santa Cruz, that again, it's an expensive place to live. It's some of these ideas were like, hey, we need to move somewhere where we've got support from family or something
Right.
like that to like start
Right.
things and get them up and running before. And hey, maybe someday we can move back, but we need to go somewhere where we've got the support to then be able to have maybe the best chances of success for starting something.
Right.
Yeah, and then I'd say that those are kind of like two of the main people or groups of people I talk to.
Got it. And then how did what Jared and myself, right? Like, why did that feel like a good decision?
Yeah, I mean, so one is like we were friends from working at Verve together. So I feel like the connection and the trust and just knowing, like I feel like just knowing each other to a certain extent that if you're gonna go into business with people, it is like getting married.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna tie your lives together in a big way, and it's like so from the connection point, I feel like the three of us had like a really good connection. From the skill set point of view, I don't think you could probably put three people together that had a more complementary skill set for owning a business than the three of us have.
Mm-hmm.
That was just a really natural fit. And then, I mean, just the icing was it seemed like we all wanted to be in Santa Cruz.
Right.
And that we were all willing to do what it took to make it work.
Yeah.
And so, it's like, I don't think I necessarily like approached talking with you guys in the same way. With the other people, it was maybe a bit more transactional, of like me approaching the idea. And I feel like with us, it came about more organically just through us continuing to hang out.
Right. It's kind of
over
brewing
time.
over time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if how your perspective is, like that was kind of my perspective, like seeing it. I don't know how if like you had like a more like your own perspective of how you saw that coming together.
Oh, for the three of us?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think the biggest benefit to our trio from the beginning was trust for me.
Yeah.
Where I felt just really good about both you guys and that nobody in the scene is a sketchy character.
Yeah.
And I'm generally, I don't know. I don't not trust people, but there's some people that I talk to that feel like they have a veil over them. And I don't want to say that those people are dishonest, but I if I can't feel the core of someone's, like if I can't feel someone's heartbeat, it makes me think twice.
Yep.
And I didn't have that hesitation with either of you, so that felt like really natural. Obviously, I've known Jared for a really long time.
Yeah.
So for him, there weren't as many unknowns.
Yep.
It's like there's positives and negatives of going in business with anybody.
Yeah.
And for Jared, I felt like whatever negatives are going to be, I'm like fully aware of those.
It's like the devil you know
Yeah,
is
like, I
always
know what-
better
I know
than
what
the
that
devil
is.
you don't.
Well, and it's just like I'm not trying to say that to disparage him. It's just I'm sure he would say something similar about me.
Yeah.
Like we all have our own quirks. I just
Yeah.
knew his, and I knew yours a little less, but I still felt very comfortable with you, and that like okay, no one's gonna do some weird shit. Like we're all on the same
Yeah.
path. Like everything just kind of felt right.
Yeah.
And that was a good thing. The skill set for sure, super complimentary.
Yeah.
There's no, I can't even think of a
Well, and those
better skill stacked set.
and those are
for
the things
me.
like trust plus the complementary skill set, because then I feel like we did a really good job of just trusting each other to run in our lanes. And obviously we talk about everything, but when you have three people that are really excellent in different areas of different skill sets, and then you trust those people to operate in their skill set, it's like that to me. That's as good as it gets.
Yeah, I think think you're 100% on that. And then now it's interesting now because the kind of where we're going into, I felt like we've had little spits and like seasons of operating in different ways.
Yep.
So in the beginning, we're just very in our lane, coming together at certain points. And then there's been this ebb and flow to where it's sometimes we're kind of leading more as a group and sometimes we're leading more individually. And it feels like now we're coming more into leading more as a group again,
Yep.
which feels very exciting to me, especially because the bones of the business are really strong.
Right.
We've, created this culture that all the essentials can be accounted for without any one of us being in the room for them. You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
Yeah.
And that feels really good. And it feels like we're coming into a more creative time.
Yeah.
And I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
That seems really fun for me. But yeah, I mean, what you described rings true. And then, on the other side of things, you are this incredible glue for me and Jared too, because we tried to open businesses before. We'd been sitting around his living room making business plans and drawing stuff out, and it just never felt quite right for me. I'm just like, I just don't think it's gonna work with the the two of us just aren't gonna work. We need third player in the room, and you have all of the skills that we don't, and the expertise in areas where we're just gonna fall like flat on our faces if we try to do it ourselves.
So, same. So, right back at you.
And it's pretty funny to think about. I think about those early days because they're really fun in Portola, and everyone's just doing a little bit of everything, and you're washing dishes every day, and then doing the P&L in the back room, and cupping some coffees. It's just a really fun time. I'm just like, wow, like I don't know, it just felt kind of magical.
Yeah,
everything felt kind of like it was supposed to be that way. For
Yeah, I think there's something like we're all really excited, really passionate about what we were starting, and just doing it with people that you love being around. Like there's just an energy I think that comes with that, and that other people from the outside could kind of tell that we were all just super like really jamming.
I hope
on
so.
what we were doing. Yeah,
I think so too, and I think that is, if I'm looking. Yeah, that's interesting, because if I look at why we've been able to do what we've been able to do, when you come into the cafes, the biggest feedback I get from people who come into the cafes is on our team, how it feels and how it makes them feel. And there's the skills and knowledge that it takes to run a business and run a cafe, but then there's also a different thing that is the energy that you put into something that is, energy, if you want to call this person-to-person energy, is this infinite renewable resource, but you got to kind of pay into the bank to get it out. You know what I mean?
I'll let you go where you want to go with that. But my 2 cents on that is that like you and Jared both have incredible person-to-person energy, but it's like I see the side to where it's like you say it's infinite. It's like I see the side of you guys to where. I'd say you guys both have your like introverted moments to where the energy's
100%.
It's not unlimited.
Oh
right?
yeah,
and
no.
I see the time when you guys are like, I don't want to. I can't put out any more energy.
For sure. No, what I mean is that I feel like every person has the opportunity to create energy and send that energy out into the world. And how you create and send that energy out into the world is a different thing than the financial metrics, than the how to make an espresso, how to make a cappuccino, because you could take someone who knows all of those things, or a group of people who knows all those things, but they're not putting out the energy in a way that makes people feel excited to be in the space that they're in. And that feels like the killer combo, as I felt like we've done a really good job of creating the energy, especially on the retail side.
And
again,
I think that's a credit to you and Jared of the energy that you bring and the way people love interacting with you guys. And then that we all, but you guys have been able to transition that energy to where it's not people are only coming to see you or Jared, but it's like you guys have created a team that also brings this energy I don't know the right way to say it, but it's like they've also created this energy that other people want to see
Yes.
and interact with, and that's the magic and incredibly difficult.
It's super difficult, and I'm glad that we're over this hump of where are Chris and Jared, or where is X person.
Yeah.
So scaling from one cafe to multiple cafes. One of the first things that happened when we opened Abbott,
Yeah, which is the second cafe.
Now we have to, we got to split our time. We just have to split our time. And there was a certain group of regulars that were just missing seeing either me or him behind the bar, because they, where we opened was in the neighborhood where we'd all worked for a long time.
Yep.
So a good part of our, guest base that came in were very familiar with us from before we even opened.
Yep.
And that made them feel very safe. They knew they were going to be taken care of. And I think they wanted to believe in the team as well. They just didn't really know them as well,
Totally.
So they knew, Heather's a great example. She knew all of her quirks, and I don't say that in a negative way, because I'm super particular with my beverages as well. We have a kinship in that way. She wants it a specific way, and she knows that Jared and I can make that exact thing happen, and that makes you feel safe. So at first it's like, where is everybody? And then, fast forward 1 or 2 years from Abbott opening, we went through a phase where we had probably a little more turnover than we wanted, or just turnover in general, which is hard for any kind of retail space, whether you got a barista or a bartender, someone who you're used to seeing, who knows you. When that person goes away, there's this feeling of just like, oh man, I really miss so-and-so, or I really miss Tanner. Where's Kristen?
It is, because I think a big part of the most successful cafes are the cafes, and the people are creating this feeling that the guests feel when they come in.
Yes.
And the guests are getting this feeling every time they come in, this feeling of connection, this feeling of whatever they connect with the person over the counter with. It's like, I think that's some of the magic of the cafe experience. And when that person who you're used to seeing every day and that you have the banter with, or that knows about your family or something like that, like they know your drink when you walk in the door, it's like when that disappears, it's like there's totally like almost like a feeling of loss.
Right. Totally. And the big challenge is to create an organization that can deliver that feeling no matter who's behind the counter.
100%.
That it's not all dependent on one person or a small group of people. And that's really hard to do. And I think that's why people do feel that loss so much when their favorite barista or their favorite bartender disappears, because in most situations that person is sadly irreplaceable.
Right.
You go from having a great experience with one person to having a mediocre experience with whoever else is left.
Or in the best case, it's just going to take time, right? It could be awesome person B after awesome person A, but it's like the guest doesn't know awesome person B, and it's just going to take time to like build that connection again.
Yeah, I think there's that time for them to get comfortable, and build the connection. But I think it's rough out there.
It is, and I think the really important thing is like how we hire people, because in that first group of people, it's like there were people, just like you say, where people weren't asking like, where's Chris or where's Jared, because Grace was there.
Sure.
And Grace was a really amazing team member who connected with people really easily, and people loved seeing Grace and getting coffee from Grace. And then she got promoted out of the cafe into
She was in the roastery.
Yeah. And so then people feel the loss of like Grace not being here, but then hey, it's Stephanie, or it's Mark or Alex, who come in after them. And I think if you're hiring for the people that want to work in service, want to provide hospitality, are into artistry, the things that, if we're hiring for our values and we're doing a really good job, I think we're doing the best we can in terms of bringing new people in who connect in the best way with our guests and live out our mission on a daily basis, right?
Yeah.
That's the best we can do, I feel like.
Hiring, and then training, and the cultural framework is such a huge portion of it, because I am under my thesis is that there are so many. Okay, how do I say this? My experience at most places is underwhelming.
Yep.
Whether that's a bar, whether that's a coffee shop, whether it's a barber shop, wherever, retail store, anywhere. Most places that I go leave me feeling kind of meh. But I don't think that's because the people working there don't care or aren't capable of doing something awesome. I think a lot of it has to do with the environment. I think a lot of people have, and some people are naturally can maneuver through this, right? Jared's a person who can naturally maneuver through this. He's never had any special training on how to connect with people or how to make people feel good.
Yeah.
He just does that. That's just part of his DNA. But there's so much potential locked inside people who want to give excellent service, want to have a job that feels like it matters, but they're not shown the way. So you see these people working at shops, and I don't hold it against them. I kind of feel bad for the greater structure that they've been in, because the story, and we've all experienced this too. It's like, cool, you get a job, you show up, they don't tell you why you're there, like what it means, what your impact means on the people that come in every day. You're not trained well on how to make those magical moments happen. You're just thrown in the fire, and that happens more often than not because it feels like it's cheaper and easier.
Bob Kappa's What Are You Paid For?
What are you paid for? I'm paid to blow your mind so hard that you come back again, possibly tell a friend.
100%.
Right?
I 100% agree with you.
And so I just think there's this huge opportunity in the workforce in general. So I think we do hire well, but I also think we're really good after the interview at setting those expectations, training people on how to do what they need to do and why that matters to the people that come in every day. And service is its own reward, but not everyone's taught that. So
100%, right? It starts from the top and through the mission and the values and through what the training program looks like, and and just how well that program gives you the whys, right? Like how much intention has been put into why you do the certain things you do, right? That intention has to be there, and then some human has to be there to talk with the people that you hire and give them the why, so that they feel connected to the intention that came from the people maybe that started the company or who run the company. I think that's really important.
Right. And where we're at now, there's always room for improvement, but we're better than we've ever been, especially at the scale we're at now, of setting up people to do that, to where nobody feels like they're missing out if they don't see person X behind the counter.
Right.
And that is one of the things that make the very rare big companies that feel magical. You take your Disneys
like
or whatever.
Disney.
Right. It's like they can't be reliant on one person. They have to have a cast of people that create magic, and they have to bring people in and shuffle them out. And you can't be like, man, I can't wait to go to Disneyland so I can see Bill. Bill works at the thing. It's just like, I'm going to Disneyland and it's all going to be awesome.
Yep.
So taking inspiration from companies that are able to do that, you think about fine dining stuff too. We go to Atelier Cren. We shouldn't have to be like, oh, it's going to be great if such and such is our server, or so-and-so's in the kitchen. You just trust in the organization because they built it in such a way that, my mind's going to be blown. And it doesn't matter who's there. They're going to give me a great experience. Because the
intention is there. First, the intention is there. Then the training is there. And it's all kind of wrapped with a bow.
Yeah, there's levels. So I feel we got work to do always, but I feel good about where we're at right now, or
same.
We're better than we've ever been. I don't even know how we got on that tip right there. I don't know how we got on the tip right there. We're bobbing and weaving through it. Oh my goodness, dude, that was thanks for sharing the story.
Oh dude, thanks for asking about it.
Oh yeah, I'm always curious about learning more about the Chuck.
Hey everyone, that's the podcast for the week. Thanks so much for listening. If you heard something that inspired you, or if you heard something that gave you more questions than answers, send us an email to podcast@catandcloud.com. And if you're looking to know more about us, then head to our website at catandcloud.com, where you can find everything we have to offer. A great place to start would be The Answer, our house coffee that's right for any occasion. Or the Best Friends Blend, a coffee that tastes just as good as the good it does by donating $1 per pound back to our partnering producers. Also, if you're feeling extra friendly, connect with us in the usual places, like YouTube, Instagram, pretty much everywhere that's hip. All right, that's it. Thanks for being awesome, everyone, and we'll be back next week.